Now, we will start with our first plenary speaking. I will give a very brief introduction about Professor Rong Wang. Professor Rong Wang is a prestigious researcher in membrane research. She has been an editorial board member of Desalination since 2011. And she is serving now as editor-chief in Journal Membrane Science. JMS is a top-tier journal for all membrane researchers to learn and publish our state-of-the-art research results. When I was studying during my PhD, my professor told me, Matthias Wessling told me, only when you publish your first JMS paper, you have gained entry to the membrane field. So, Professor Rong Wang has excelled in her scientific research and also contributed significantly to the management in various bodies. Professor Wang is the chair of the School of Civil and Environmental Engineering in Nanyang since 2014, and she is also the president of Membrane Society in Singapore. Let us welcome Professor Rong Wang to talk about her exciting research work on development of reverse osmosis membranes for seawater desalination. Professor Wang, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Prof. He, for your kind introduction. Now I would like to share the screen.
So you can share screen. Can you click the share screen? Yeah.
Can you see my screen?
Yes. So you can.
Okay, I make a full screen
Right.
now. Okay.
Yeah, that's perfect, Professor Wang.
Oh, okay. A very good morning, good afternoon, and good evening to colleagues at the different time zone. I'm Rong Wang from Singapore Membrane Technology Center, Nanyang Technological University, Singapore. It's my great pleasure and a privilege to be here with all of you and to deliver the first plenary lecture for this conference. I would like to thank the conference organizing committee and the conference chairs, Professor Tao He and Professor Xiong, for the invitation. Taking this opportunity, I would like to talk about the development of reverse osmosis membranes for seawater desalination. In particular, I would like to share with you the progress of our work on this topic. Basically, my talk will be divided into 3 parts. In the beginning, I will provide a brief review on the current status of the seawater reverse osmosis SWRO membrane development and highlight the key factors and the challenges for the synthesis of SWRO membrane, so you can understand the motivations for us to make the efforts to work on this topic. In the second part, I will talk about our ongoing work on SWRO membrane. I will show you how we developed aquaporin-based biomimetic flat sheet membrane for seawater desalination. Some of you may recall I reported aquaporin-based membranes before, but our early work is for brackish water and for water reuse application. In today's presentation, I will talk about the new type of aquaporin-based membrane, specially designed for seawater desalination. This is the new work conducted in SMTC in our center that has not been presented in any international conference yet. Finally, I will wrap up my presentation with conclusions. That's the arrangement for my today's presentation. Well, let's start. We know water scarcity is a global challenge. According to the data released by the World Resources Institute in 2019, Singapore is ranked as the top #1, the most water-stressed country in the world. Here is the ranking list. Singapore is listed here. On the other hand, we know ocean on the Earth contains around 97% of the entire water supply. Seawater represents a virtually infinite water resource, with almost half of the world's population living within 100 kilometers of an ocean. It means we can access to the ocean quite easily. So securing affordable and sustainable water supply by seawater desalination has provided strong incentive for developing novel technologies for seawater desalination. In the past 20 years, there have been tremendous growth in constructing desalination plants for sustainable water supply. Among the various technologies for desal, seawater reverse osmosis is dominant in the market due to its better energetics and the lower footprint. Now let's look at Singapore's situation. Singapore started its desal journey in 2005 when the first desal plant was set up. Currently, Singapore have 4 desalination plants, and one more desal plant will be ready very soon. Today, desalinated water can meet up to 25% of Singapore's current water demand. By 2060, this number will increase to 30%. 30% refers to our future water needs. As I mentioned earlier, reverse osmosis is a dominant technology. It's a state-of-the-art technology for seawater desalination. At the center of the RO technology are the thin film composite RO membranes. The typical structure is shown here. We can see the TFC RO membrane have a relatively thick and a relatively dense support. On top is a thin layer, polyamide active layer. And this layer have thickness around 200 to 300 nanometer. That is formed through the interfacial polymerization, like the MPD in aqueous solution react with TMC in the organic phase. So we understand the key performance indicator, actually, the key factor to decide the TFC membrane performance is the top selective layer, polyamide layer. But the substrate also have the impact for the formation of the polyamide layer because substrate is provide a platform to conduct the interfacial polymerization. Over the last 60 years, there has been tremendous growth for the SWRO membrane. For SWRO membrane development, you can see from this milestone chart, start from 1963. Now in 2000s, the SWRO product in the market produced by those key industrial players like the GE, Coach, Dow, Torre, Hydronautics, and Nano H2O. Those membranes have very good salt rejection over 99.7 to 8. You see here, the water permeability is around 1 to 2 LMH per bar. However, the further exploitation of this technology is limited by the relatively low water permeability and the high specific energy consumption required that multiplies to high unit cost for water production. In addition, membrane fouling, insufficient boron rejection, and poor chlorine resistance are the challenges for SWRO membrane development. You may ask, how high is the upper limit of SWRO membrane's permeability that can help to achieve the lowest energy consumption? Well, a lot of the researchers has worked out the relationship for the specific energy consumption versus membrane permeability, as shown in this figure. For SWRO, it was projected that if water permeability increased from 1 to 3 LMH per bar, here, the energy consumption and the number of the pressure vessels of SWRO plant can be reduced by 15% and 44% respectively. In other words, The ideal SWRO membrane should have water permeability around 3 LMH per bar with sodium chloride rejection around 99.8%. This is referred to the seawater. Now let's look at the recent progress for SWRO membrane development in the last 10 years. It is a big surprise to see the numbers of the publications and the patents for SWRO membranes are quite low, especially when we compare with the publications for the BWRO membranes. It's also, I think it indicates it's quite challenging to develop the SWRO membrane as compared with the BWRO membrane. But in the market, from time to time, we always see the new product or the new brochures from those SWRO membrane manufacturers like the Toray, DuPont, Hydronomics, LG Chemicals. I think their innovations are considered as a proprietary information that was not published openly. So, well, what we can learn from the literature? Here, I summarize some key factors and the challenges for the synthesis of the SWRO membrane. I will go through this information in the following slides. Some research concern the substrate. Indeed, substrate is the platform for the interfacial polymerization to form the selective layer. So the surface property, pore structure, will definitely affect the IP layer formation. So people try to optimize the support layer in terms of the pore size distribution, and the pore density. Also, people try to adjust the surface charge and the hydrophilicity of the support layer in order to get a better membranes after applying the interfacial polymerization. Some key references in the recent years are listed in this table. Here, I would like to give you an example, and this work was done in my group. We know the operating pressure for SWRO membrane is around 50 to 80 bar. So the mechanical strength of the membrane should be very strong. Commercial SWRO membranes normally have a thick, relatively dense support, as shown in this right-hand side SEM picture. C, D, and E. But we explore the possibility to make the highly porous microstructure support layer for SWRO. We hope to minimize the mass transfer resistance in the substrate and provide a better platform for the IP layer formation. We found a more porous support can also be used for SWRO membrane fabrication if it has a recurring finger-like sublayer structure. So the stress are able to even out on the support. You look at the structure like this. I cannot move. Seems, oh yeah, here. Yeah, this is the structure we developed, and we do the analysis, and also we measure the mechanical strength strong enough. But because of this more porous structure, it reduces the mass transfer resistance significantly. We can enhance the water flux for this membrane. And this work was done by my PhD students, Lin Yujie. We understand that for the TFC-RO membrane, selective layer played a critical role in determining the membrane performance. So a lot of the R&D focus on the optimization of the selective layer. We can change the interfacial polymerization formula or procedures in order to adjust the matrix structure and finally fine-tune the membrane performance. 4 important parameters will affect the selectivity of SWRO membranes that include thickness, roughness, cross-linking degree, and the hydrophilicity of the polyamide layer. So by changing the interfacial polymerization formula and the procedures, we can change these parameters. Here, I give you another example that this work is also done in my group. We try to understand the role of the aqueous and organic co-solvent in fabricating SWRO membranes. We found the presence of co-solvent in the aqueous phase promote the diffusion rate of the diamine monomers, and in turn, it tailor the physical chemical property of the polyamide layer. So we can improve the membrane performance. And this work was done by my another PhD student, Li Can, and this manuscript already submitted to the GMS. Currently is at the first round of the revision. Okay, in addition to the formula, people also try to use different additive and chemical compounds to adjust to affect the interfacial polymerization. Those chemicals and additives used, we found are reported in the pattern. I list this pattern here for your information. Different type of the filler materials like the zeolite, graphene oxide, carbon nanotube, morph, etc. has been widely used to make the thin film nanocomposite SWRO membranes to enhance the membrane selectivity, boron rejection, chlorine resistance, or reduce membrane fouling, etc. But the issue is that the incorporation of the filler material in the polyamide layer can lead to the defect formation. Therefore, it will compromise the membrane selectivity. Another challenging issue is that when we scale up the fabrication, how to avoid the defect formation. This is the critical issue. Biomimetic membranes has attracted much attention in the last 10 years because of the outstanding water transport property of the natural water channel proteins like the biological membranes. One of the successful fabrication methods was based on the incorporation of the water channel or synthetic water channel within lipid bilayers or amphiphilic block copolymer. Then this channel containing vesicles will be embedded into the polymer matrix through the interfacial polymerization. Actually, this method was invented by us at the Singapore Membrane Technology Center. We report the first aquaporin-based flat sheet membranes and aquaporin-based hollow fiber membranes for brackish water and water reuse application in 2012 and 2015, respectively. For flat sheet membranes, the water permeability can improve by 50%. For hollow fibers, the permeability increased by 100%, double the permeability, while maintain similar level or even higher salt rejection. We have scaled up the fabrication of the biomimetic membranes to 8-inch size membrane module containing 12,800 pieces of the fibers. This is the hollow fiber, RO type, and the membrane can operate at a low pressure for brackish water and the new water application. Currently, we have a pilot system running at the Singapore local new water production plants, and the testing has over 220 days. The capacity is 14 cubic meter per day for clean water production. Our test results demonstrate that our membranes can lead to 40 to 50% pumping energy saving for new water production. This is a very exciting result. And our technology has been licensed to a spin-off company last year, NANPlus, for commercialization. What I just talked is the biomimetic membranes for brackish water application. We also try to make the aquaporin-based membranes biomimetic membrane for seawater desalination. We know for seawater desalination, the conditions is more challenging because the high salinity. The support layer should be very tight so that it can reject the salts. Finally, we work out the first aquaporin-based biomimetic membranes for seawater desalination in 2019. And this work was published in the Journal of Desalination, and Dr. Liye and other team members contribute to this work. This work gives us confidence. It shows the aquaporin-based membranes also have the potential to be used for seawater desalination. Last year, we developed a new method and filed a patent that is to load the aquaporin vesicle directly to the membrane substrate through the spraying technique. Key inventors include Dr. Qi Saren and Dr. Liye. With this experience on working on the aquaporin-based membranes 2.5 years ago, we received the funding support from the PUB, Singapore National Water Agency, to develop the aquaporin-based biomimetic membranes for seawater desalination. Now, I will go through some details to show you what we are doing now. The objective is to fabricate high-performance flat-sheet seawater aquaporin-based membranes by enhancing the salt rejection over 99% to sodium chloride and double the water permeability compared to the commonly used SWRO membranes in the market. In the second phase, then we'll scale up the membrane fabrication to make the 2.5-inch and 4-inch membrane modules. And we will build a pilot with capacity 10 cubic meter per day clean water from seawater using our biomimetic membranes for the water production. That's a very challenging task. The first step for us for this project is to optimize the substrate. We developed a new substrate by ourselves using polysulfone material. We fabricate polysulfone UF type of membranes on pilot scale casting machines. The optimized substrate have water permeability around 330 LMH per bar with average pore size around 32 nanometer. Here is the photos of our pilot scale flat sheet casting machine. I also prepare a short video to give you a rough idea how this machine works. You can see here, we prepare the polymer dope and we use the PET non-solvent as a support. After polymer film apply on the support, enter the water bath, precipitate, we can form the UF type membranes as a substrate. The width of these membranes is 60 centimeter. Through these machines, we found out the substrate performance is very good. It have a very good quality control. The reproducibility is very good. We try to understand the impact of the substrate on the IP layer formation. We conduct a fundamental study. For example, we found appropriate NPD TM3 ratio and the efficient transport of the amines toward the organic phase is critical. It could lead to a highly permeable and highly selective polymer selective layer, polyamide selective layer. And this work was done by Dr. Zhao Yali and the other team members. And this is the recent work published in this year. We also found, ideally, a hydrophobic substrate with smaller surface pores and high surface porosity is preferred for the IP layer to form the thin film. Through this substrate optimization, we get the best SWRO membranes that have a sodium chloride rejection over 99.5%, and the water permeability is 1.72 LMH per bar under the seawater desalination condition. Here, I would like to draw attention, without this membrane, without aquaporin incorporation, we just optimize the substrate. We compared our membranes with the commercial membranes in the chart. You can see our membranes show pretty good performance. The second step is to incorporate aquaporin into the selective layer. First, we use the blending method. That's the conventional method that we used before. This means, we mix the aquaporin containing vesicle with the MPT aqueous solution, then go through the normal interfacial polymerization procedure. And finally, we use the PVA coating to form the antifouling layer. Different from the blending methods, we use the spraying methods to directly load aquaporin on the substrate. As shown in this schematic diagram, there are two options. One is to spray the aquaporin vesicle directly to the substrate, then apply the aqueous phase and follow the normal procedure. Another option is to apply load the aquaporin vesicles after MPD aqueous solution. This means, the aquaporin vesicle will load directly in the thin film of this MPD aqueous phase, then apply TMC and go through the interfacial polymerization. We found the after aqueous phase is a better option because it can keep all the aquaporins inside the matrix, will not waste any aquaporin and the lipid. Here, we built automatic spraying machines, the device to do the work. You can see the nozzle spread aquaporin. It moves from the left-hand side to the right-hand side. And also the substrate, the membrane substrate also move from the front to the end. You can see in this way, we can ensure the coverage of the aquaporin uniformly on the substrate surface. Now, I'd like to show you the SEM, TEM, and the AFM images of our two membranes. One is the control without aquaporin incorporation. Another is aquaporin-based SWRO membranes. With the incorporation of the aquaporin, the polyamide layer have more leaves. It also have a more open nano void compared to the control. The surface roughness was higher, much higher as compared to the control membranes. Look at the performance. Now we get the membranes with water permeability 3.36 LMH per bar. The salt rejection is over 99%. The enhancement compared to the control membrane is over 30%, while maintain very high salt rejection. This result is very exciting. Later, we do the PVA coating to enhance the antifouling property. At the same time, it can boost the salt rejection. The rejection can further enhance by sacrificing a little bit of the water permeability. We compare the two methods, spraying method and blending method, to load aquaporins. Both membranes can work. We get the similar aquaporin-based membranes. The performance are very similar, but spraying methods offer advantages in saving big amount of the lipsons or aquaporins used by precisely control the spraying amount on the substrate. So the production cost will reduce. That's the advantage. We also compare the performance of our newly developed aquaporin-based SWRO membranes with commercial membranes. You can see here, our membranes are listed here, the performance, water permeability, and Y is the rejection. All the testing, all the membranes were tested in the lab under the same condition. This is for the fair comparison. So you can see our aquaporin-based membranes with PVA coating exist the best overall performance and much better than the commercial membrane. You can see the result here. We also do the long-term testing to understand the fouling impact, also chemical stability. We know the membrane needs to do the chemical cleaning. We wonder if our membrane is stable when we use the chemical agents to do the cleaning. So we follow the standard protocol for membrane cleaning, physical cleaning, followed by the alkaline chemical cleaning and the acid chemical cleaning. These are the standard procedures. Now, here are the results. We do the long-term testing over 70 days, non-stop testing using the real seawater. We test the 4 types of the membranes, 2 commercial membranes and 2 from in-house made membranes. You can see aquaporin-based membranes show the best performance in terms of water flux, and salt rejection maintain similar level as other membranes, over 99.6%. And this result is very exciting. We also test the boron rejection for our newly developed membranes. We know SWRO membrane need to exhibit a reasonable boron rejection, like 70 to 80%. We test all the in-house made membranes show comparable or even better boron rejection compared with the commercial SWC5 LD membranes, because this is one of the best membrane in the market now. Because of very good result in the laboratory, now the project entered the second phase. We will do the scale up of the fabrication to make the 2.5-inch and 4-inch membrane modules. And then later we'll build 10 cubic meter per day pilot system to test our aquaporin-based SWRO membranes. Here are the setup, the facilities used for the membrane scaling up production. And this facility is from Separation Technologies Applied Research and Translation, STAR Center in Singapore. We collaborate with STAR for this scale-up production. We only need to modify the fabrication line a bit. Just add a spray nozzle. You can see here. Spray nozzle, then you can see the nozzle will spray the aquaporin to the membranes, the surface here. This work is ongoing. Before I end my wrap up my presentation, I'd like to point out that it is important that we have a common understanding on the difference between SWRO membranes and the BWRO membranes. Because of the high salinity from the seawater, the SWRO membranes should have very tightened selective layer, because the high salinity impose stringent requirement on the membrane structure. The SWRO membrane for seawater desalination need to reject salts as high as possible. So the matrix of the polyamide layer should be tightened enough. So the thickness will also change, will become more thick compared to the BWRO membranes. So we think normally the upper bound limit defined by the BWRO membrane data will not be useful for SWRO membranes. So we collect more than 100 data points from SWRO membranes to redraw these two figures, salt rejection versus permeability, and the water salt perm selectivity versus permeability. You can see the upper bound now is here. This is only for SWRO. Our aquaporin-based SWRO membranes are located here. You can see it shows excellent performance compared with existing membranes in the literature and in the market. Now, I would like to make a conclusions. Our technology is one of the most efficient technologies for seawater desalination. In this presentation, the recent progress in SWRO membrane development with focus on the perm selective trade-off has been revealed. We have successfully developed a novel biomimetic SWRO membranes, and we are now moving towards scale-up production. Innovation and novel solutions are needed in order to minimize the energy consumption for SWRO process. This is the last slide. I would like to thank all the staff and the students who work with me on this topic in the past years. Especially, I would like to thank the team members, the current team members, Dr. Lai Guosong, Dr. Zhao Yali. These two are the research fellows, and the two PhD students, Lin Yujie and Li Can. This is the team efforts. I would also like to thank the funding support from the NRF and the PUB. Without the funding support, we cannot do anything. All this work was conducted at the Singapore Membrane Technology Center that is supported by the Singapore Economic Development Board. I would also like to acknowledge the support from the EDB. With this, I would like to thank you for your attention. I'm more than happy to answer your question.
Thank you, Professor Wang, Professor Rong Wang, for the exciting research, and congratulations for your large modules. That's what we always want to achieve, but you are the first person to achieve it. There are some questions from the audience, so I will read them for you.
Okay, sure.
First is from Amil. Thank you very much for very nice work and talk. How about the mechanical strength and thermochemical stability of biomimic SWRO membranes?
Okay, for these SWRO membranes developed in our lab, all the testing was done at a high pressure. We mimic the real application, so we use the real seawater to run over 50 bar or 55 bar. And all the testing is simulate the real application under the high pressure. So the mechanical strengths have no issue, that's for sure. And in terms of the thermal stability, if you find our previous work, we have the one publication talking about biomimetic membranes thermal stability. We run the membranes at 25 degrees, then 45 degree, and 65 degree, and the low down to the 45, and the low down to the 25 degree. The membrane performance of the aquaporin-based membrane remain. So the thermal stability within this range, no issue.
Yeah, there is an extra question from the audience. Is it, how about long-term stability? I think he wants to know for many, many hours. And what is the lifetime of your membrane?
Okay. Currently in the lab, we have done the long-term testing 70 days, 70 days, non-stop. Yeah. And the membranes do the testing in parallel with the commercial membrane in the same system. This means they have 4 cells in parallel to the testing, non-stop, using the real seawater we collect from the PUB sites, the seawater desalination. And 70 days, no issue, very stable. And actually, after we scale up, we have one task to run the pilot system for half a year. That's the task given by the PUB, by the funding agency. In that way, we can demonstrate the long-term stability.
Thank you. There is another question from the audience. Thanks, Professor Wang. I want to ask the performance of the seawater RO. I noticed the permeability is still low compared to traditional membranes. Was it correct?
If you look at my slide carefully, the water permeability doubled as compared with the conventional or commercial membranes. Now in the market, the best we can find the SWRO membrane, the water permeability is 2 LMH per bar. Majority is just around 1. Our membranes, the water permeability is 3 LMH per bar, doubled. That's the target given by the PUB. And the third rejection for the seawater is 99.4 or 99.5%.
Yeah, I noticed.
Later, my presentation material will be available, right? There's a recall. Then you can see those numbers in more details.
Oh, thank you very much. There were some people asking me, can they have the slides? So they can. There is another question from the audience, from Professor Fu Liu. Is the long-term anti-fouling performance of the membrane related to PVA coating or related to the aquaporin stuff?
Actually, you look at the methodology we incorporate aquaporin. Aquaporin was already embedded in the matrix of the polyamide layer. the surface, you cannot find the aquaporin. Aquaporin already embedded inside. That's the beauty. We make it work. So the fouling is, these membranes is similar to the normal thin film, the polyamide membranes, very similar.
Okay.
But of course, the roughness is high, but we do the PVA coating to smooth the surface and enhance the hydrophilicity, and then at the same time, enhance the salt rejection. So we get a pretty good result.
Professor Rong, be patient. There are some other questions popping out. Mihail from France, he asked, what is the increase of the permeability from the reference membrane to the aquaporin membrane? Could you report the flux of the salted water?
Okay. In my slide, actually, you can see one chart, one figure shows the comparison. Compare with the control membrane. For this SWRO membranes, 30%, 31% flux enhanced, the permeability enhancement. This is the number in the slide. I already showed the number. And for the long-term, the testing, the flux, actually, we have some testing results, the long-term. You can use the real seawater, you can find the flux. And we give all the testing condition and design in the slide. You will see the testing condition and the cross flow of velocity and the pressure all are provided in the slide.
Okay. Another question, what would be the ideal number for energy consumption at 50% recovery by 2025? Actually, I didn't get a question, but do you get the question?
And actually, a lot of the simulation, the projections for this, what are the minimum specific energy consumption? Because we cannot overcome the thermodynamic, the limit, right? So actually, there has a lot of paper from Professor John Linhart, MIT, or from Professor Manny from the Yale. They have a lot of projections. Actually, in my presentation, when I do the review, I also collect their data in the slide. You will see once your water permeability reach certain level, you further enhance the water permeability will not solve the issue because there's limit there.
Yeah. Okay, I have two last questions. You can answer this briefly. We will stop here because otherwise we cannot stop. So one of the second to the last. How about the stability of the PVA coating?
Okay, that's a good question. But so far what we have tested in the lab, no issue. But the PVA coating is quite commonly used.
Yeah.
The industry also uses PVA coating.
Yes. So there is no real innovation for PVA. The last question, Professor Wang. Great presentations, Professor Wang. I was wondering how you were able to orient the aquaporin channels in the same direction and perpendicular to the membrane surface.
Oh, we cannot. Basically, aquaporin was embedded in the vesicle. That's like the ball.
So it is. Yeah. So there is misunderstanding. Yes. Actually, I want to ask you the same question, but okay. There is another one pop up. The last one. Okay. Compare with the two references referred on upper bound curves. Is there room for this membrane to surpass it, right?
Yes. And currently, we developed the upper bound limit, the line, based on the 100 data points for SWRO membrane. I think that would be reasonable, all, BWRO, SWRO, they have totally different property. So you cannot mix this together. So we developed a new upper bound, and currently our Biomimetic membrane already surpassed a bit on the upper bound there.
Great, Professor Wang. And it was real nice to listen to your talk. But time is too limited. We have to go to the next plenary speaker. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Professor.
See you next time.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you very much.
Sean, it's your job now.
So can I start now?
Please.
Yeah.